All right, here we go.
Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know I don't know. I feel weird sometimes asking people to come on because it's a new thing for me, and I haven't been doing this long, and so I appreciate that you said yes to coming on my podcast.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I'm super excited. I'm happy to be a part of your podcasting journey so far. So it's awesome to be here.
How you guys been holding up in all this bullshit?
We've been holding up. The first probably week or so was a little crazy, just trying to adjust to everything. But since then, we've bought some weights. We bought a bench and a rack and everything like that. So at least we're able to kind of keep ourselves sane with some exercise. Lots of studying going on, lots of watching tape. So we're doing the best that we can. How about you guys?
Yeah, same here. I mean, I got two kids at home, and I've been home for 23 days now. Well, they've been home for 23 days, and I've been off work for almost 2 weeks now, over 2 weeks. So I've been at home every day, and me and the wife are just trying to get a routine together, and having the kids not, it's not a free for all for them. Like we still need to educate them and give them schoolwork and stuff, and it's yeah,
It's an
not easy.
adjustment.
Yeah, it's not easy, but there's a part of me that kind of likes it. It's like I always said to my wife, like I wish I could homeschool my kids because
Okay.
there's a big part of me that doesn't kind of agree with a lot of how how they teach our kids nowadays, especially
Right.
and now I get to basically because I'm at home and we get to do a schedule and do a curriculum and all that stuff. So it's fun to try it out and see what works and see what doesn't. But yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. And you guys working or?
Not right now. We've both managed to be able to not have to work right now. Justin just got released from the military. He after
That's
10 years, he served for
Yeah.
10 years. So he decided to try something else. So we're both just kind of taking advantage of the time that we have right now. Past few months, we've been able to do a lot of touring around and a lot of shows before all this started. So
Yeah.
yeah, we've kind of just been enjoying wrestling and taking advantage of the time that we had before all this started.
You must miss wrestling like crazy, no? Like right now?
Yes, so much. I miss everybody. I just miss seeing everybody. It's so hard
Yeah.
when you're on the road almost every weekend for, months and months and months. And then to go from that to not that at all, not even being able to see your friends, like that's killing me a little bit. I miss everybody so much.
Before we keep going, tell the listeners who you are and where you're from and what you do, please,
All right.
if you wouldn't mind.
Well, listeners, my name is Emily Parker. I am a professional wrestling referee. I'm from Truro, Nova Scotia in the Maritimes. I'm living in Halifax right now. What I'm kind of about is I am a second generation pro wrestling referee. So my father, Frank Parker, he was a referee for Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling in the Maritimes for Emile Dupre. And he started when I was about 5. He started his training. So around the time I was around 7 years old was when he really started getting more active in the wrestling business. He was on the road a lot. We went to a lot of shows. So throughout my childhood, he was doing the wrestling thing, and I just kind of grew up with that. And throughout the years, I supported that and everything else. He had to get surgeries on his ankles after a while, so helped him through that, watched him recover, watched him get back into it, and he loved it. But unfortunately, in about the fall of 2011, he was diagnosed with cancer. So we kind of had to take a step back from that, and that involved him reffing and going to shows. And ultimately, I decided to take a step back as well and focus on getting him healthy and getting him to his treatments and everything like that. But in December of 2014, he unfortunately passed away. He lost his battle with cancer. So I kind
Sorry
of
to
took
hear
a
about
step
that.
back from, thank you. I kind of took a step back from everything. And then, we have a guy that was a great friends with my dad. His name was Wildman Gary Williams. He's still very active in our maritime wrestling scene today. And he sent me a message on Facebook, and he asked me to come to a show. And it had been, quite a while. It had been a few years since I had been to a show. So I was a little hesitant at first, but, a new wrestling promotion had come out. They were doing really well, and he thought it would be nice for me to come and see. So I did. And then as soon as I sat in that chair and started watching the show, all the memories came back. And it kind of gave me the itch, maybe I could do this someday. I'd thought about it for a little while, and the idea had always gotten shot down by somebody. Nobody wants a female referee. There weren't any female referees around here, so it probably wouldn't work out. But at another show I ended up going to a few months later, I met Justin and Connors from Sabotage. And they kind of took me under their wing. They brought me back around everybody, going and watching pay-per-views. It'd been years since I had watched a pay-per-view. They brought me around everybody to hang out with them. And then, one day we were hanging out, Justin and I, and he dropped the idea of reffing a show. And I said, I'd love to do that someday, but, it's never really worked out for me, so I never really pursued it. And he got in touch with a guy, Dick Durning, who had a promotion in St. John, New Brunswick, and, told him about me. And Dick, who had worked with my dad, years before, automatically said yes. He said, yep, bring her down. We'll give you a chance. And that's kind of where it all started for me. So it was really thanks to Justin. He gave me that push I needed to really get in the ring for the first time.
The amount of stories that I hear in professional wrestling, obviously we share the same thing in professional wrestling. One of the things that I hear often is how people take others under their wings, per se, whatever you want to call it, but like they see something in someone and they're willing to give their time, energy, and sacrifice all that to try and teach or help someone make it in the business of professional wrestling. The community that surrounds the professional wrestling is like no other I've ever been a part of in my entire life. I was a mixed martial artist before a fighter, and it's a lot of lonely days in the gym, and you don't necessarily share anything, or if anything, a lot, or if anything, with other competitors and stuff like that. It's really you're in training all the time and beating each other up. But when I got into pro wrestling, there was just something about it where I was like, number one, you're in the ring and you have to basically put your life in someone else's hand. Most of the time, someone you don't know, never spoken to, never met in your life. And for 8 to 15 minutes, you have to give everything you got as far as trust and put it into this person that you've just met today or that day. And the way people talk about each other, the way people pick each other up and are willing to pay attention to your matches and stuff like that. It's hard to explain to people why you do so, but it's a beautiful thing in professional wrestling. And when I hear you talk about how the guys, Connor and Justin, took you under and made calls and send messages for you and really got you involved in professional wrestling, I just fucking love hearing shit like that, because it, like I said, there's nothing else like it. And when I try to explain to people why I'm a pro wrestler or why I do what I do, a lot of people just can't seem to understand why I would put my body through so much for so little right now. And I'm like, you just don't get it.
No, it's just one of those things that you really have to immerse yourself in it to really understand, because I thought I understood growing up in it as a kid. But then once I actually got myself immersed in it and was a part of everything, I didn't realize how much I didn't understand at first. But now I couldn't even imagine not having these people in my life. You know what I mean? I'd be lost without them.
Was there a part of you that ever wanted to be a wrestler and not a referee?
Not really. I really, really love refereeing. I never really had a huge desire to wrestle. But when I did the Revolution, the all women's show back in September, and I saw all the girls working together and just the vibe that they created and the show that they were able to put on, I was like, you know what? It would be kind of cool to learn some things. And you know, I've started to learn the basics. Justin got me in the ring a couple times to learn, you know, basic back bumps and rolls and things like that. And I can see how it would actually benefit me as a referee. So I would like to continue on learning things, but I don't really have a desire to wrestle. I would just like to learn the basics so that I can help my refereeing and just be better in the ring.
Obviously, with you telling your story early on and your father being a referee himself, and it's obviously clear to see why you do what you do, right? But my interest in people like you and why I wanted you on the podcast is that obviously we're in the business of professional wrestling, and that by itself, just being in that business, it makes us a minority to the majority of people. Being a pro wrestler or being anything in pro wrestling, either be a worker, a referee, a promoter, anybody involved in the back or in front of the crowd. There's not many of us that do it well. There's not many of us that do it, number one. There's not a lot of us that do it well and that commit to it 100%. It's hard. It's difficult. It's just something that, like you said, you have to be passionate about and you have to immerse yourself so much into it. The thing why I find someone like you very interesting is that, number one, every time you ref one of my matches, I'm like, oh, thank you. There's like, every time I have a good referee in my match, I'm like, I don't have to worry about that. Thank you. Because a lot of times, unfortunately, you're left to work with people, and then you're like, oh, now I have to pay attention to a fifth person in the ring, like, you know, like being in a tag team or even in single. It's either I have to pay attention to two people instead of one now, and it makes my life, your job, be harder. So when I get to work with someone like you and some of the great refs, it makes obviously our lives in the ring a lot easier. And one of the reasons, like I said, because I find you so interesting, is that you're so good, but you work so hard at being better every time. And you could tell that you want to be great at this. And like I explained earlier, just being part of the business as human beings in professional business, we're the minority. But you, as a female, as a woman, you being a referee, number one, there's obviously a lot of you that are workers and performers, but being a referee, like, there's not a lot of women referees in the business. What is, obviously we know your dad was a ref, and obviously it's a big part of the reason why you do it, but what would you say what about you is it that makes you want to be great at something like being a professional wrestling referee, like at something that there's just so little of in this world?
A lot of it for me is setting a positive influence for other women and for little girls. You know, we're immersed in a world where, you know, men are dominant in a lot of things, and if a woman does try to do it, you know, it's encouraged, but it's kind of questioned. So the fact that I can overcome that I don't know how to explain it. The fact that I can overcome people being so hesitant and unsure and make it a positive experience for them, that means a lot to me. Just setting that positive example and, you know, letting other women know that we can be strong and we can enforce order no matter who we're in the ring with. Because I don't just ref women all the time. I ref guys that are 3 times my size a lot, but they still have to listen. So for me, it's not about enforcing rules and being the authority and everything like that. Yeah, that's cool. But it's setting that example and even getting women just to think, even if they think for a minute, like, hey, you know what? If she can do it, then I can do it too. If I can just give them that second in their mind to even consider it, that's what's super important for me.
It's great the way you think, because but just by your response or just by your acts, basically you could feel that you try to empower women and other people into pursuing something that's obviously not easy. Like, I've always been a fan of people that just decide on something and they work at it and put the work behind it and keep working even though there's obstacles. Obviously, for you, there might have been more obstacle than, say, a guy doing exactly what you do, right?
For sure.
And let's be honest, the business of professional wrestling for the longest time wasn't the most open-minded business to be in. Even in a lot of promotion these days, it's still like that. It's sad to see, but when I see someone like you that works hard and that gets so much exposure, like, I'll go through my fucking timeline and I'll see you on someone else's timeline that post a match and you're in it, and it's like I don't have to go through your timeline to see you, and that means to me, like, man, like, she's out there, she's hustling, she's doing great, she's empowering other women, other people, and it's like, fuck, like, there's just something. I call that it's so professional wrestling to be like that. It's like, the people that do it right and that are good people in professional wrestling will always look to empower other people and help other people out. There's a few people that I find are selfish, and it's always about them. And it's always like, what can you bring into my life so that I could be better or that I can have more exposure? But I quickly learned when you become a pro wrestler that, number one, you're never alone in the ring. And if you were alone wrestling a broomstick, you wouldn't get anything over and people would just boo the shit out of you. And the fact that you're in there with someone else, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5, no matter how many people, including the referee, and be able to tell a story within, sometimes you got 6 minutes. Hey guys, we're running late. Sorry, you got 6 minutes. Can you make it work? And as performers, as artists, I always go, give me 3 minutes. I don't give a shit. I'll do my best to put not just myself over, but the people in the ring over. Before this, I recorded a podcast with Wes Dawson.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we got to talking about one match where we had together. They were the Paradise Boys and we were the Night Train Express. We were not even a year in the business, me and Mustafa, and they were on their 3rd or 4th match, maybe 5th or 6th. And we just had a match where just talking about it, like, gives me goosebumps. Just one of those matches that we worked hard at and we made magic in the ring. And he was saying, he's like, when we were standing behind and you guys got this huge pop when you won, and we were in the back, me and my partner, and he said, we kept hearing the fans chanting. He's like, it brought me joy. And someone told him, said, well, yeah, but you lost. He's like, no. He's like, you have to understand that I was part of getting that pop for them. Like, everybody that works together in that ring is part of telling that story. And when everybody is good at at what they do, including the ref, including everybody involved in the match, it makes everything so easy and it makes everything so fun. Because pro wrestling, as much as it can be so much fun, can be miserable if you get to work with people that aren't doing it for the right reason. And
Absolutely.
We run into that so much, I find. And so when I see people like you and the guys, Sabotage, Connor, and all these guys, and I follow you guys on social media and stuff like that, and I see how you guys perform and I see how you guys operate, that's what I like to see in the business of professional wrestling. And I wish that was something that we saw a lot more of.
I do too. I agree. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there whose intentions aren't exactly the greatest when it comes to wrestling and wanting to make the business thrive. We just want to put on good shows. We want people to enjoy their time. People spend their money to come and watch us. We want to make them get their money's worth. And for us too, we're all just trying to help each other out. That's one of the things I love about refereeing too, is that it gives me an opportunity to help all of you. it's so easy. I can easily make a bad guy look like even more of a bad guy, or help a babyface get more sympathy. You know, I work with Marco Estrada a lot.
Yeah.
And we have created some crazy intense moments, just he and I together, that have helped build his matches. And I think that's great. It brings me a lot of joy to be able to help you guys get your matches over, help you guys get more heat so that people will hate you, help the baby faces get over with the crowd so that it creates an amazing story. That's what it's all about for me.
It's funny you say that. To add to your point, at a very young age, when I started watching wrestling, obviously when I was a kid, I would pay attention to the workers, to the performers, to the men in the ring, some women. But when I was 7, I started watching wrestling in 1987 for me, like WrestleMania 3, Macho Man, Steamboat, first match that really grabbed me and brought me into the world of professional wrestling. But very early on, I started paying attention to the referee. I didn't know why, but for me, especially nowadays, if I watch a product like Raw and SmackDown, I'm not interested in all the matches. So sometimes I'll sit next to my son, and while he's watching the match, I'm like, I can give two shits about the match, because a lot of the times I'm just not interested either in the storyline or, the people working. But I always pay attention to the referee. I've been obsessed with the referee, because I kind of realized that early on in my when I watched wrestling, that the referee had as much of a part to play in this than the workers in the ring. Like there's you're trying to tell a story now about only having 2 or 4 people in the ring working, but that referee, like you said earlier, like by you can easily make a heel a better heel if you do your job right. You could easier make a face a better face, a team a better team, like especially tag teams.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The referee in a tag team match is the most crucial part of it, in my opinion. And unfortunately, and I might be 85+%, unfortunately, in tag team match aren't as good as they can be, because the ref doesn't understand the psychology of the tag team, number one, and isn't following the rules that are implemented. And then it's kind of becomes a free-for-all, and then you're like, well, why can they do that and then why aren't they doing that? Simply based on the fact that they're good. Like you have to dig so much deeper to understand the psychology if the referee is not doing his or her job properly. But when you guys are doing your job properly, the fan doesn't have to think so hard to make sense of the story being told in the ring.
Right.
So the importance on referee, like I've always paid attention. Even my wife said, why do you pay attention to the referees? I'm like, because look at where he's positioned. He's always like the good ones. They're always in position. They're always relaying information between wrestlers. They're constantly checking on the wrestlers, making sure you as a referee are in control of everything that goes on to that ring, so that these guys have the least amount of worries, so that they can feel free to be as creative as possible. And you're in there just trying to keep all this chaos from exploding outside of the ring, right?
Not to mention when you have somebody in your ear as well telling you all these things, and you're still trying to figure out where you need to be. It's crazy. It's a lot. But I always said, and I tell my guys that I'm training here at home too, that tag team wrestling is where you do the most learning. I've been trying really hard. I love doing tag team matches because I find that's where I can showcase my skill the most. But I've really been trying to get my other guys in there with the tag teams, especially with Sabotage, because they're tag team masters around here. Any tag team would be lucky to get in the ring with them at this point, because they are just on fire. They know what they're doing. They're always in sync. So I always make sure to try to get my reps in there with them to learn, because that's where you do your most learning. You have to be on the ball when you're doing a tag team match. It's crazy.
Of all, how many years now you've been a ref?
I will be reffing for 4 years next month.
Oh, well, So basically at the same time as I got into the business. I've been
Yeah.
4+ years now. It was 4 years in March. I had my first. It was 4 years in December that I had my first dojo match, but my first match in front of a live audience was in March. And of all the things you have to keep track of in the ring, speed, whatever the case may be, what's the most challenging for you that you find yourself constantly working at?
Just with singles and tags, like just in general?
Yeah, just in general.
Positioning. I'm always constantly working on positioning and speed, especially with tag matches. Like I said, I mean, there was one tag match I refereed with Sabotage, and they had almost 20 pins in that match. And that's a lot. So I find positioning I'm always working on. And with tag matches too, you know, being more alert when the other member of the tag team is trying to get in the ring, you know, making sure that I'm getting over to them in time so that, you know, the guys on the other behind my back can figure out what they're doing, or if they need to rearrange something, you know. So I'm constantly working on that too, just being more available throughout matches in case you guys need to pass something, for me to pass something on. Just things like that, being more available, I guess, during matches, if that makes any sense.
No, I get it, because it's probably one of the most important things. Being alert, aware of your surrounding in a professional wrestling ring, number one, no matter what your job is in the ring. Once you get into those ropes, you kind of have to all be on the same level as far as awareness and everything, if you want everything to go well and safe. Yeah. The fact that there's a lot of referees that just don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. They kind of just see their job as being the person that's going to count 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2 or 1, and then enforce certain rules. But a lot of the times, I find that, number one, I find a lot of the referees don't give a shit, and you could tell, and you're like, I'm just here because no one else wanted to do it, and that happens on the independent scene, right? You're a ref, like, you know, Emily Parker. She, like you said, I hear your name, like, she's a ref. Like, she's a ref. That's all she does in the business of professional wrestling. For me, she's a great referee. And there's a few other ones like that. I've gotten to work with great referees, but there's also sometimes you show up at a show and you're like, yeah, the referee had decided not to show up, or he didn't show up. I don't know where he's at. So my nephew is going to be in the ring. He's going to be the one reffing. He's never been in there. He puts a shirt on, and then you're like, now you're stuck to work a different kind of match, because you're like, well, I can't trust this person. I've never seen him before in a ring. I don't know how good he is or how bad he is. So back to my point that I made earlier, like when I see someone like you on the sheet and I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm like, I don't have to worry about this anymore. Because
that would be super stressful.
For me, I have so many things to worry about and juggle during a match, like all wrestlers do. But me, I'm an anxious person, and I always see the worst case scenarios and everything. So when I'm working in a match, I'm always looking for the points where it could either go real bad or real good. And it's always in those moments where I'm like, everybody in the ring is going to have to be on the same level at this point. For 15 seconds, for 30 seconds, doesn't matter how long, but for that little time, this is a crucial part of telling this storyline or this story in the ring. And if not everybody's on point, and when you're sometimes forced to work with people that aren't as sharp as you and others, you're like, fuck, now I have to compensate, or now I'm going to have to do something completely different that might not put this story over as much as it could be. And that's why I have so much respect for referees that really want to learn.
It's hard too, as a referee. I mean, we had a big show a couple of years ago where we brought in Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. So it was a huge deal. We had a War Games match that show as well. So all of a sudden, these guys who said they were referees started coming out of the woodwork. We were setting up for the show that day, and I think by the time the show started, we had 7 referees. So it was me and the normal referee that was used for shows, and then there were 4 other guys that came in. One of the guys lent us his ring that we used for the War Games match. So, it was fair that we gave him a match. Whatever. But then the other two just, they hadn't been around in a long time. They never came and helped to set up anything like that. They were friends with the owner of the wrestling company. So they came and said that they wanted to rep in the show. The owner of the company comes up to me and says, you have to give them a spot. So now we have 7 referees on our card, 5 of them who have, not very much experience. And now I have to try and figure out what matches to put them with. And that was stressful. And they just wanted to be part of the big show. I haven't seen them since then. So it's very, very frustrating from a referee standpoint to have people come in not taking it very seriously, but wanting to be put on this platform with all of these amazingly talented people, and you have to put them on there. And it's
the politics of professional wrestling. I think that for the people on the outside that look at us, that being part of this business of professional wrestling, sometimes they just see us at what goes on in the ring. They have no idea. It's sad to say it, and the way I say it might not be exactly, but there's so much bullshit in professional wrestling. Bad shit, the perfect example is what the story you just said. Like, you got people that were like, hey, I get to be a ref, or I get to be part of the biggest show of the year, or maybe of this promotion's history, and then I'm not going to show up after. I just want to put my face on camera or just put my name out there. But you get that when it comes to refereeing, but you also have that for, workers and performers and guys that are wrestlers, that all of a sudden you're like, hey, can I be on your show? And the being able to deal with the politics of professional wrestling is something that's, I think, people don't speak about enough, because there's a lot more politics going on in professional wrestling that people think, and it's a part of the business. It's like, sometimes it's who you know and who is willing to give you a chance, right? Like I can go out there every Saturday, every Sunday, every Friday. I work my ass off, but if I lose a spot or I lose somewhere simply because, well, I know this person and he asked me and I know he never comes, like, it's a bit frustrating. So the fact that you go through the same bullshit sometimes, it's part of the business that's not everybody is willing to deal with, and a lot of people just give up because they're like, I don't enjoy this part of the business. Like, I just want to show up, I want to wrestle, and I want to get paid, or maybe if I'm lucky. And there's not many people out there willing to do it for free, just simply to get better at their art. Like I was telling Dawson earlier, like, I see every pro wrestler as an artist, and that ring, that camera, the people involved in the match, like, they're in charge of putting their art out there and being a performer. It's so hard to juggle all these things together. And again, when I see someone like you that works so hard and that takes it, you just have pride in what you do. And I think it's a huge part of being successful in the business of professional wrestling.
Very much so. You need to take pride in what you do. And especially for myself, being a second generation and feeling like, not like I have shoes to fill, but wanting to carry on a legacy, because my dad did a lot of great things for the wrestling community. So if I'm able to carry that on in any way, I mean, that alone drives me to want to be the best that I can be. I mean, obviously it puts on an added pressure. You also, I might not want to call it a chip on your shoulder, but like, again, like, being a minority in a minority business, as far as being a ref, and being so good at it and wanting to be great at it, you kind of have to have that chip on your shoulder. It's kind of like, it gives me a little bit more incentive or a little bit more motivation to want to be great at this, because there's not a lot of us that can be great at this, or that, not saying can't, but want to be great at this particular thing, That's the thing. It's the desire and the drive. I see lots of workers around here saying how bad they want it, but they're not really putting as much work into it. I mean, people think we're crazy for, driving the 12 hours to Quebec, or, the 21, 22 hours to Ontario to be on a show. But I wouldn't take that back for anything, because it's helped me get to where I'm at. There have been times where I've traveled that far and I haven't made as much money as I have here at home, but the experience alone has gotten me where I am. Coming to work for Drew at Torture Chamber, that was a whole different thing for me. I came from working in the Maritimes where we aren't so much focused on TV and, what's currently going on right now, to Torture Chamber where I have an earpiece stuck in my ear and I'm, trying to relay information with somebody in my ear, working the horseshoe and the hard cam. That alone is enough for me to want to keep coming back for Drew, getting that TV experience and who he's connected to. And it's opened other doors for us to Ontario and to other companies in Quebec as well. So you have to want to do it, and wanting to do it isn't always fun sometimes. Those drives, as much as I love being on the road with those guys, sometimes those drives, they suck, whether it's weather or, people being tired and hungry. It's not 100% fun all the time, but you kind of have to look past that because you want to be the best that you can be. It's possible. You just have to really, really want it.
The commitment you have to give to professional wrestling is like, I think there's nothing like it. I think we stated before, but I know I spoke to Dawson about it earlier. It's like professional wrestling is one of those things that you have to be 100% in, that you can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Because if you got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you better have both feet out, because it's not going to work out for you. You're not going to reach your potential,
Or you have to kind of set realistic expectations for what you're doing. Like I see, these guys saying that they want to work more and everything like that, but, they have families and full-time jobs and everything like that. So you kind of have to set your expectations to be realistic too. Luckily for Justin and I, we're both at a point in our lives where we're able to do all the traveling and work all the time at shows and everything like that. But that's not always going to be the case. We eventually want to get married and start a family and everything like that. So we're taking advantage of this time now, but we know when that time comes, our expectations aren't going to be where they are right now. And that's okay.
It's definitely okay. I mean, this is coming from someone that started this whole venture when he was 34 years old and had kids and a family, and I try to juggle all those things. And if you want to talk about somebody having 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like I try as much as possible to have all in and everything. The last 4 years, I've pretty much dedicated myself to everything I got outside of being a father and a husband, and to professional wrestling. But I see guys like you when you're on the fucking road. I follow you guys on social media. I follow because I know you guys and I speak to you guys, to Justin and to Connor and to you, and I see fucking you going to Ontario for a weekend and then being back home on Monday and then coming to Quebec the following weekend and then going to Ontario. I'm like, we all do it. The traveling in professional wrestling, especially on the independent scene, it's a thing. You have to travel 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12, 20 hours. It's part of it.
Especially for us here in the Maritimes where, we're not a big province, so we don't have a whole lot of promotions running shows. So for you guys in Quebec and Ontario, you have a lot more going on. So that's really awesome. But I mean, for us, we kind of have to put in that little bit of extra work just to get our names out there. But it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
And the fact that you guys are willing to put that extra effort gets you noticed. And it's always, professional wrestling is another thing that the people willing to put forward the extra effort, the extra attention, the extra workout, the extra training, the extra seminar, to be able to take in as much information, as much knowledge as possible. That's how you get noticed in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get noticed not by what you're able to do in the ring, because a lot of people are superstars in the ring, but they can give two shits about the business outside the ring. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then you got guys that are okay in the ring, but that are so committed to growing the sport of professional wrestling, that thing, professional wrestling, for them, it's like they're growing. They use what they can in the ring as being as a performer and a worker, but they're also part of growing something that is professional wrestling through either a promotion or through whatever the case may be. And
Absolutely.
it's always those people that you kind of want to be surround yourself with, because it's always positive. When you deal with guys and girls like that, there's less of the bullshit of professional wrestling. There's less of the politicking. There's less of all the BS. It's all like, hey, great job. Here's what I think you should do. Maybe try this next time. Like, people willing to watch your matches, critique it after. To me, I told Dawson, I said, I knew I was a professional wrestler, not after my first match, but after the first time a vet actually came to me and said, I watched your match. You did great out there. Here's what I think you might want to try and do. And I was like, this guy over here took time to watch my match and then come to me and spend time and energy to tell me how to get better. Or I'm like, that right there tells you who, you really need to respect in his business, and
Absolutely.
who you really have to look forward to working with.
For sure. And even as a referee, if a wrestler comes up to me and offers advice, I think that's awesome. We brought in Santino Morello a couple summers ago, and I'll forever be thankful for that experience, because he took the time to watch every match on the show that he wasn't in, referees included. He pulled me aside after I came back from doing a match. He gave me some feedback. He said, hey, try applying this when you go out to ref next and see how you like it. And so I did. I went out and I applied it, and it worked out so much better for me. And I came back, and he looked at me and he had the biggest smile on his face just because I tried to apply what he said to me. And ever since then, he's actually been a resource for me. He's put my name into WWE for tryouts. I've gotten the opportunity to work at Destiny at his gym at Battle Arts Academy. So he's kind of, kept me under his wing a little bit, and he's been a great resource. So even things like that, I'm super thankful for. I really do think that the phrase "it takes a village" applies to professional wrestling, because it seems like everybody is just wanting to help everybody get better and be the best that they can be.
And that's really the environment that is best to work in, is the environment that is, you said, like that village where people are willing to put forward the time and effort to help out not just themselves, but whoever they're working with. And even if someone they're not in a match with, like being able to pay attention to your match and give their perspective and their, a vet in the business is everything to professional wrestling, right? Someone that's been doing it for 20, 30 years or even 10 years, It's funny because I was telling Dawson, I said, we sit here and we talk about professional wrestling like we've been doing it our whole lives. But I said, we've fucking been doing it for 4 years, talk about myself, right? And for most people in their regular life, 4 year is a lot. But in the business of professional wrestling, 4 years ain't shit.
It feels like no time has gone by at all. I still remember the very first match I ref like it was yesterday. It just seems like these 4 years have flown by. I can't believe it.
Do you know how many matches you've refed in total?
Not in total, because I didn't keep track my first year, and I really wish that I hadn't. I really started keeping track in 2019. So in 2019, I was just 3 matches short of reffing 200 matches for the whole year.
Oh, wow. So,
yeah, that would have been my goal for 2020, but with all this COVID-19 stuff going on, I doubt that's going to happen. But they're getting up there, which is really, really nice.
It's great when professional wrestling is all about being consistent. And when I remember when I started getting booked every weekend, like my first year in the business, I was working once a month. Yeah. And then the following year, I put myself out there and I was working every weekend. By the third year, I had to refuse bookings, and I was like, I'm all right. I'm getting your reps in the ring and getting that to work consistently every weekend, sometimes twice a weekend. Three if you're lucky, you know, or unlucky, whatever way you want to look at it, right? My body would tell me I'm unlucky if I have to work 3 times in a weekend. But my you know, there's just something about pro wrestling that you really can only get better. You can get better by watching tape, by watching matches, and by listening to people and going to seminars. But being in the ring and doing it, feeding off the energy of the people inside the ring and the people outside the ring, the fans, that's where you really learn. Yeah, that's where you really see what works and what doesn't. The fans will let you know if you're bullshit, if it's bullshit or not, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
They don't hide it. You know, like sometimes you'll meet somebody in the back. You're like, yeah, your match was okay. And they're not really willing to go forward and tell you what's wrong with your matches unless they're like, yo, like, stop it with this bullshit. Like, I always appreciate the person that's willing to tell me like it is versus the person that wants to sugarcoat it. And fans are like,
Quebec are brutal when it comes to your feedback, which is awesome. But I find out of everywhere, the Quebec fans are the ones that are like, okay, this is what you need to fix.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. There's something special about the fans here in Quebec that I haven't, like, obviously I've been wrestled in the Maritimes and I have wrestled in Ontario a few times, but, and even when I wrestled here in Montreal, like in town, compared to when I wrestled like outside of town, like 2-3 hours, like somewhere where the wrestling is like 200-300 people and they only have it once a month. It's their only, the passion for some, you know, I'm a face for the most part, right? So I get that avenue, but I have friends that I work with, obviously, like Dawson and Team Tight and these fucking guys. Like, they working with these guys every time, it's like, oh, thank God. Like, even Sabotage. I've worked with Sabotage now once only. And it was like, obviously working with a great team like Sabotage, I'm like, oh, we're so fucking lucky. But being able to feed off the energy that they get and the reactions that they get by being great heels.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing with Team Tight. It's like, I'll just sit there and cross my arms and enjoy watching the show. And I'm in the fucking match. Sometimes I'm in the, you know, I'm not in the ring because it's a tag team. And I'm just sitting there just laughing inside my head going, this motherfucker, like, stop talking. Especially with Dawson now, like when he was a manager, I'm like, dude, stop, man. I can't. Like, fuck, I'm gonna fucking laugh. I can't. I love it though. It's a connection that you can't get anywhere else. Like, it's a connection where, like, I tell these guys on the daily how much I love them. It's like to tell another man that you love him, that you've known through wrestling, only wrestling. Like, it's not someone that I grew up with. It's not someone that I've known for years. Some of these guys I've known for 4 years. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking love you because we share something that not a lot of people get to share.
No, there's a certain bond when it comes to professional wrestling. Like, when I went to Mississauga to do the Revolution, the all women's show, I knew a couple of the girls. But by the end of that show, like, we were all calling each other sisters and everything. Like, the bond that we created just those few hours that we were together, we put on a great show. That show was so awesome. So we were all hyped up from that. And I think we all stood together in the parking lot for at least an hour after the show because we just all didn't want to leave each other, you know. So it's crazy when you come into a group of people and you just get so attached to them.
After what freaks me out sometimes is you meet someone once, right? And you're like, oh yeah, me, like, we're going to be friends forever. Like, we're going to like each other forever. Like, when I met you guys, Sabotage, the first handshake, the first, hey guys, like, I'm like, oh, you guys from Maritimes? I'm from the Maritimes. I'm from, like, I'm like, me and, like, we're going to be good friends for a long time, not only because we're in professional wrestling, but if professional wrestling is not part of either of our lives anymore, we're still going to be like, hey, how are you? At least to communicate and be friends with, right? And it's like, after one thing, it's like you said, this bond in professional wrestling that we share the same thing, the same, I don't know, the same craziness towards something so
sharing a passion.
I don't want to say messed up, but something so different, so like special. Like professional wrestling is something that is so fucking special.
It is. You can't describe it too. And you meet people and you only know them for a short time, but then you're inviting them into your home and they're inviting you into their home, and you're sitting down. Quebec and Ontario.
Sorry, it disconnected a little bit. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. All good. No, it's all good.
So just the being able to go to Quebec and Ontario, knowing that we have friends and people we consider family there, people that would gladly take us into their homes if we needed it. I think that's one of the most special things about it.
Yeah, the family environment, or the factor of like, it's like a big family, right? Like you said, it's like a village. It's like everybody's got to look out after each other, and it's like once you realize that this whole thing, professional wrestling, or this whole promotion won't work if not everybody's on the same page with the same interests and making this one thing, this singular thing, professional wrestling, or that promotion in question. That it's not just about individual performances in the ring. It's like me, like when I got into the business of professional wrestling and I was just an observer from the outside, just a fan, the minute that I started training and learning the ins and outs of professional wrestling, the behind the scenes stuff, that's really when I started realizing like, oh, okay, there's a lot more to professional wrestling than just being able to be acrobatic or big and strong in the ring. It's really like everybody, from the photographer to the referee to the everybody has a part to play, and if we're all on the same track to making this thing better, then it's gonna work. But unfortunately, a lot of the times there's a lot of guys just looking for a chance to put themselves out there, and sometimes they'll be like, oh, finally I get to wrestle for this promotion. So because they know they're going to get more people are going to, more eyes on them. And it's some of them are great. Unfortunately, they are, and they get to be, but it's really the ones like you guys and the guys that are willing to put forward the extra effort and building the community and really the professional wrestling aspect of it is really where I like kind of gravitated after a few years in the business. It's like, oh yeah, there's something extremely positive about really wanting the best for everybody and not just for yourself. And then in the end, it just repays it back to yourself. Like it's just going to make yourself better, because then you get to work with better and better people and better wrestlers and better referees and bigger promotions and more eyes on you.
And even that too, like I find now more so, my main focus too is to be great so that I can bring back good things for the guys that I'm training and working with as well. I want them to be as great. I want them to be the best referees in the Maritimes, and they're on their way there. I've trained some really, really good guys. We had our big show in January at the Casino Moncton, and I slotted one of my referees, Cody, to referee Flip Gordon and Matt Angel. And that was really like the first, high profile match that he refereed, and just seeing him kill it and to be happy and proud of himself, like that just made me feel like all of this extra work that I've been putting in and all these kilometers that I've driven on the road, all the bad weather I've had to face, everything, it was so worth it to me in that moment, just to see what I can bring back for them and to help them, be great and kill it in matches. I was emotional watching both of them because they've been learning so well, and being able to be a part of their learning experience and their growth is really, at this point, super important to me. I'm really starting to understand how important it is to give back to other referees to help them become better.
It's important, and I learned that that it's important to have someone that's willing to go the extra mile. Like when I walked into Torture Chamber Pro Wrestling Dojo for the first time, and I met Drew, and then I started training there. like he really pays attention to the small details, not just the big flips and all that stuff, but every single move. And the guy is a student of the game, and the knowledge he has is truly amazing. And the fact that he can just share that wisdom and all that experience with you while you're in that school. I mean, it took me about 8 months of training to have my first match, and I felt like I had like I wasn't an eight. It felt like I had been training for years, you know. And even when I started wrestling, people would tell me like, "Yo, like how many matches?" I'm like, "Oh, this is my third match," and they'd be like, "What? This is your third match?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Wow." And I'm like, "Yeah," because you know I was trained well. I came from a reputable school, and I was trained by somebody that really paid attention to the psychology of professional wrestling. He wasn't just trying to just teach me a few things and then send me on his way and like, all right, go, I got your money. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you're going to be here. I'm going to teach you something that you get to work, and I'm going to show you something different in the small things. And at first it's frustrating because obviously you're like, especially for me, it's like, I'm eager to just get in there and just fucking do it.
You want to do it.
But then you start realizing the importance of having to listen to someone that's willing to share his knowledge with you. Yeah. And once you start listening and applying what you're being told, and then you notice it works, it's great for you, but it's also great for that person. Like for you, like the feelings, the emotions you got when you saw him in that ring kill it, knowing that you had a part to play in that. Like, I can only imagine every time Drew sees one of his students killing him in the ring, he's like, I had a hand in that. I might not be all me. Obviously, he's got a part to play in this, but I had the part to play in this too. I mean,
Drew is awesome. One thing that I noticed right away about Drew and about Torture Chamber is that he, aside from the match before he was out there standing there watching every single match. And I really appreciated that, because he had feedback for everybody, not just the wrestlers, but the referees and the managers. And I mean, even the fact that he is willing to bring Justin and Connors and myself into his school to be a part of your guys' shows, like, I feel like he doesn't do that very often. So he must have really seen something in Justin and Connors and even me to want to bring us back, you know, once a month, every other month, and to help us. I mean, I've heard Justin on the phone late at night with Drew, you know, because Drew just thought of something super quick that he thought would benefit Justin and Connors in a match, and he had to let them know right away. I've had conversations myself with Drew. You know, he sent me voice clips. I think the most recent one, it was about submissions for referees. He says, you know, when the guys go in for a submission, don't ask if they're okay right away or if they give up. Let them sink that submission in. Let them go, and then go in and ask if they want to quit, because it just creates that much more intensity in the match, and it creates more intensity for the fans. And it's just, you know, the fact that he was willing just to do that, you know, at 1 o'clock in the morning, just because he felt like it would benefit me right then and there. I appreciate that so much. He's been really, really great to us. All of you guys have been great to us, and we really appreciate it. I mean, that time that we all went out for sushi for Drew's birthday, you know, it was all of you guys together, but and us, but we didn't feel like it was you guys and us. We felt like a part of the Torture Chamber family that night, getting to celebrate Drew's birthday with everybody, and that really meant a lot to us.
And I think that part of the business is as important as everything else. The part of being able to share the experience, share the knowledge, share the experience, and share the good times. You know what I mean? Like, be able to be happy with the product that was put forward that night, and be able to look everybody in the eyes and go, good job, great job. Now here's what we can do to make the next show be better, and be willing, like Drew, just same thing. Like, many times my fucking phone will ring and I'm like, Drew, what does he want? And then I go, all right. And like, I know it's going to be wrestling related. I know it's going to be good news. I know it's going to be something that number one, I know it's going to be a long conversation. Because a lot of the times if he calls me, I'm like, we could talk forever. He could talk for, like, it's always. And I learned so much from him. Honestly, I learned so much from him at first when I started going to his school. I would drive him home after class sometimes.
Okay.
Dude, we'd sit in the car sometimes till mid 12:30. Like I'm like, I gotta go. I gotta work tomorrow. And like I'm still 20 minutes away from home.
Yeah.
But I learned so much traveling with him and being able to share those moments with him. And even though I knew I was going to be tired the next day, I was like, well, this is a bit of knowledge that I need to know in order for me to be the best possible athlete, the best possible wrestler that I can be right now. So I'm like, I'm going to sacrifice this sleeping time to listen to this man. If he's willing to put forward I always got the feeling with Drew from early on that if he didn't think it was worth his time, he wasn't going to give you his time.
Right.
So when I realized that early on and he started giving me his time to teach me and to call me, to message me, to help me out, I knew that right there. I was like, well, he must see something in me and I can't just waste all of this away. If he sees potential in me and he's willing to go the extra mile to help me out, then I have to be courteous enough to be receptive to his information and actually try to do what he says, because chances are he's 20 plus years in the business, multiple time champion.
Yeah.
I mean,
He knows
and
something.
it's like, plus he runs his wrestling school successfully. It's like if I don't listen to this man, then who am I going to fucking listen to, at the end of the day?
Yeah.
And I feel extremely blessed and privileged to have been part of his school and to have learned from the guy, because I feel like it added years to my experience. It's like I might be only 4 years in, but I might have the same experience maybe as someone that's 5 or 6 years in, simply by having listened to what he had to say and applying the things he taught me. And people like him are crucial to the business of professional wrestling.
Yeah, we realized that when the boys first met him, and then when they brought me in and I first met him, we realized that pretty quick. He's an incredible human being. Got nothing but respect for that guy.
And there's a lot of those guys out there, and even though I don't know all of them, I do, like, I pay attention a lot to things that go on social media. And like, if I look like a guy like Marcus Burke, like I've never really spoken to him except maybe a message here and there, but I've heard great things about him from the boys, and I know they work a lot with him, and you could tell he has such an interest in promoting professional wrestling in the Maritimes and how important it is to him to do it the right way. And
yeah.
It's inspiring when I watch him do all that stuff. Not just him, but anybody willing to sacrifice almost everything in order to put forward an idea and that they truly believe in.
Yeah. I don't think anybody will ever realize what he's done for us and for maritime wrestling. He's an amazing wrestler. We all know how great of a wrestler he is. And I'm sure he's had so many opportunities presented to him, but yet he's chosen to stay in the Maritimes and help build maritime wrestling to help us get better instead of, working on himself. That means a lot, especially to us. And he's always there for us. He's always constantly checking in on us. Like, even throughout this whole time where we've had to pretty much be housebound, he's constantly checking in on us, keeping on us about, making sure we're exercising and, just so that we're ready for whenever that next show is going to be. He's doing it right, and he's had to take a lot of heat for it, but he's done a lot of really good things for maritime wrestling, and it's an honor to be able to work for him.
It's sad, but most guys that are doing it right for the business of professional wrestling take heat for it.
I know.
A lot of you have to be. Look, I don't want to use the word asshole. It's not the word, but it's the word that comes to mind. Like, you have to be a certain way in a way to be a good promoter of professional wrestling and to be in it for the right reason. Sometimes you have to be rough on the edges with certain people to make sure they understand that you ain't in this to just fuck around. You're in this for the right reason. And to the people that sometimes just want to goof around and aren't taking it seriously, they don't see that side of it, and they might say like, oh, that fucking guy, like, yeah, he's not in it for the right, like they're just hating on those people.
And that's the thing, especially with him. I noticed once North Pro came to be, and once North Pro fruition and everything like that, it was, he had a certain vision for what he wanted from his wrestlers and how he wanted the shows to go and everything like that. And of course, we had lots of people popping up out of the woodwork wanting to work for him, and they weren't what he was looking for his roster. They could have been great wrestlers, but they just weren't what he was looking for. And he was never mean about it or negative about it. He was always straightforward about it. But at the end of the day, these people are like, oh, he's an asshole. He just didn't want to book me. That's not it. He may run a show a few months down the road where you're a character and your work would be perfect, and he'll give you a call for sure. But you can't hate on somebody who has a vision and is wanting to do things right. You can't.
And it's also like, after a while, if you're a promoter and it's your baby, like, you have to be willing to do things your way and not bend when someone says, oh, you're doing it wrong. Like, maybe I am, but it's a lot of trial and error in pro wrestling, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, let me try to add this to my character, or add this to my persona. Then you try down in the ring and you're like, yeah, that didn't fucking work at all. And you have to be willing to take those chances, because it's the only way where you're going to one day get in the ring and let me try this. And then you're like, holy shit, look at the pop it got. It actually worked. Holy fuck. Now I can add this to my, and it's the same thing for people that are in the business of promoting shows. It's like, let me book this guy. Let me give a chance to this guy. He's not on anybody's radar, but I see something. And then someone else will go, well, why didn't you book me and you booked that guy? Yeah, you're just an asshole. Like that. There's as a promoter and as someone that's been in the if you've been in the business for a long time, you're going to have received some hate at a certain point, and you have to be willing to just skim it out and just kind of dodge, bob and weave, and just go, yeah, fuck your bullshit. This is my vision, and this is where I'm willing to go. And if it doesn't work, then I'll be willing to move in different directions. But for now, like, this is what I want to do, and you're not part of that. You're not part of that vision for now. It doesn't mean you won't be in the future, but for now, you're just not part of that vision. You're not what we're looking for. You kind of have to be like that. You can't be nice to everybody, and you can't be like, yeah, I'll put you on my shows, because then at the end of the day, you don't look like you really give a shit about your product, and then the wrestlers are gonna bring forward that same energy.
And
it's all
Vince
about
McMahon
energy.
is hiring every single person that comes along? No. And that's what a lot of people are working towards. So, I mean, you can't have like these rose-colored glasses on and think everybody's going to book you, and then you get up to a higher platform and they're like, not what we're looking for, and then you get all upset. Like,
a lot of entitlement in professional wrestling, people that think they're entitled to certain positions when they really aren't, It's like that in life, though, and I try to stay away from these people, is because entitlement for me is something I had when I was a kid, unfortunately. And I try to work hard at shedding that shit, and I'm definitely not like that anymore. But when I was younger, I always thought that things would happen for me without having to work hard at anything. And I was expecting good things to happen on a day-to-day basis based on absolutely nothing I was putting out there. And then I realized, like, oh, if I don't put out a proper energy, I won't get anything back in return. Like, this shit, They don't just fork out free positive shit on the daily just to someone like me that's just willing to have a fucked up perspective about it. And professional wrestling is exactly that,
I agree. Very much so.
Listen, it's been over an hour. I'm extremely happy that we were able to have this conversation. I never want to do interviews. I'm just really looking to have great conversation with great people, interesting people. And one of the reasons why I wanted you on my podcast was because I thought you were an amazing referee, and I wanted your perspective on what it is to be a woman's referee let's be honest, in a man's world for now. And hopefully, honestly, like, if I look at everybody on TV, I really only pay attention to the women referee because they're so intense that I don't know their names, but there's one girl in WWE, that I love. She's on SmackDown now, I believe.
Jessica.
Yeah, Jessica.
Yeah.
And then there's this other one on AEW. I just fucking
Aubrey.
love her energy. Oh my God, she scares me. If I was in the ring with her, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Like she brings this like intensity, but this like she means
awesome.
business.
She is awesome. I'm a part of a Facebook group called Zebra Talk, and it formulated around the time I started a few years ago, but it's literally referees from all over the world in a group together. We talk about all kinds of different reffing related things. There's WWE referees on there, NXT referees. Aubrey was on there before she got signed to AEW, so I've been lucky enough to be keeping in contact with her all through that. But she did reach out to me recently as well since she got signed. So I mean, it's really nice to be able to have her as a resource as well, especially as a woman who's making so much headway in this business right now. Like she's Chris Jericho's preferred referee. So I mean, that's an honor in and of itself for a referee alone, but for a woman.
Yeah. There's just I honestly, I'm not just saying this because you're on right now and you're in front of me. That having a woman referee in your match, and even when I watch it on TV, it adds something to the match because you're like, oh, wait a minute. First thing you think for most guys, they're like, how is this little woman going to be able to contain these 4 monsters or these 2 monsters? And then when you see each other getting the guys' faces and they back up and it adds, there's so much more I find you could do with the match with a woman referee in the match. Simply because you get to add the small details to either add a comedic aspect or a serious aspect or that you don't get to do with just a man. And when a man's being a ref, it's just something that I love so much. And honestly, like I have so much respect for anybody willing to step through the ropes, wrestlers, referees, anybody. But the fact that someone like you is willing to step into the ring and do such an amazing job and sacrifice so much as far as time and travel and being around the right people. It's inspiring. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today on my podcast. So I appreciate you accepted this.
Oh, I appreciate you asking me. Honestly, it was great. I didn't even realize that we've been doing this for the last hour and 15 minutes. So I mean, I had a blast.
It's great because I was talking to Dawson earlier for an hour and a half and I had to cut him off. I'm like, dude, like I got to go eat something because I got another one of these in 30 minutes. I said I could talk to him if I can cut him off, we'd still be going. No word of a lie. Me and him are just that kind of like we just go on. It's like, hey, how are you? Bang. And then 3 hours later, you're like, fuck, we've been talking for 3 hours. And
it's pretty easy with him. I can see how that happens.
You could just shoot one small question and let him go for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And you don't have to I just cross your arms and just sit back and enjoy. But listen, I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on this podcast and tell people where they can find you on social media, if you don't mind.
All right. Well, you can find me on Facebook. I am just Emily Parker on Facebook, and you can look me up on Instagram. I am ref_Parker Jr. And I'm also on Twitter now too. That's as recent, but I am Parker Jr. Ref on Twitter. So if you want to give me a follow on all 3 of those, I'd appreciate it. I'll more than likely follow you back.
Perfect. Guys and girls, if you heard it right, go and follow Emily, please. It'd be greatly appreciated. Thanks again for doing this, and I'm sure we'll get to do this again if you're willing to come on again. I could do this all the time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon, okay? Be safe.
Awesome. Take care. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.